Hello and welcome to The Den. This is a series I like to call Den and Now, where we take a look at games from the past and see how they held up to the test of time. Dust off your Super Nintendos and get ready for some platforming action, because today we're going to take a look at one of the few games that can actually go toe-to-toe with everybody's favorite Reploid, Mega Man. Don't go anywhere, this is Den and Now. This is Skyblazer, a 2D action platformer developed by Ukeyote and published by Sony ImageSoft. Released in January of 1994, this action platformer goes toe-to-toe with some of the best action platformers of the era. Long before the dawn of the PlayStation, Sony took to subsidizing a number of publishers in the game development market, one of which was CSG ImageSoft in the US. The focus when the studio opened was to publish games exclusively for the Nintendo consoles. Once Sony set up their North American division, the studio was renamed in 1991 to the more recognized Sony ImageSoft. The game was generally favored among the magazine columnists at the time. The 1993 December issue of GamePro published a review mentioning, "Skyblazer is the kind of frustrating that dangles victory just out of your reach, urging you to try again and again and again. That makes for some great gaming." Coincidentally, while researching this video, this issue of GamePro also covered another of Ukeyote's titles. The Japanese game development studio also developed the Hook games, an accompaniment to the 1991 film starring Robin Williams of the same name. This game, like many other action platformers of the time, doesn't have much story. While Tecmo proved with Ninja Gaiden that story can not only exist in an action platformer, but so can cutscenes, Ukeyote's Skyblazer proves something else. You don't have to have a good story to have a good game. Skyblazer takes a healthy whack at the very dead horse of a plot that is damsel in distress. Still, the lifeless jittering and twitchings of even this dead horse can produce some form of story motivation. You start the game up and are greeted to this story primer before the game start screen shows. "I am Raglan, Lord of Darkness, King of Destruction. Ashura, Lord of War, summon your warlords, conquer the overworld, and restore my glory." Yeah, brilliant. You are Sky, son of Sky Lord. Okay, so anyways, you start the game up and are dumpstered by this guy Ashura at the very beginning of the game. He captures the sorceress Ariana and tells you that you weren't even worth the effort. Powerless and defeated, you're saved by your faithful companion, Old Man. Old Man serves as your guide on your quest to obtain new powers and put them to use by defeating the Lord of Darkness and his minions once and for all, rescuing the young sorceress Ariana before flying off into the sunset. No, really, he actually flies off into the horizon for the end credits. I'm not making this up. I've been trying to search for the right words to describe the visuals of this game. I've decided on mythological. You see every manner of creature here, from one-eyed monsters, plants with serpentine mouths, and an elephant dragon. The designs are just as fascinating as they are forgettable. Now, that's not to say the designs are bad, but the fact that the enemies die in one hit, and most of them don't pose a genuine threat other than running into them, makes it really hard to remember any of these enemies. The bosses, on the other hand, are quite memorable. Level design in this game is top-notch. Almost every level has a background of clouds, dust storms, and other activity to make the level seem more than just a 2D platforming side-scroller. They play with all sorts of ideas, from underwater sections where you ride currents to automatic side-scrolling levels where you need to keep up, towers you need to ascend or descend without falling to your doom, to lush forests where you dance about on treetop canopies. And what good platformer isn't complete without an amazing castle level that tests your mastery of your individual skills and powers you've collected along the way? The music feels heavily inspired by Indian culture at times, with what I'm assuming is a MIDI version of a sitar. That's an instrument with strings above and below a set of curved frets. Other times it takes on action music of a traditional platformer, bouncing somewhat haphazardly between the two styles. This isn't a bad thing per se, but it definitely doesn't feed into a proper cohesion of theme. As much fun as I'm poking at the writing here, I want to take a moment to applaud this game's opener in a different way. This is nearly identical to the start of MegaMan X in almost every fashion, which has been wonderfully dissected and applauded numerous times by numerous creators. I'll leave a card to my favorite of these above, but the real takeaway is this. The start of the game gives you a sandbox level to understand how to control your character, how powerful you are, and how to use your powers in a controlled environment. Upon reaching the first boss, you feel like you're hot soup and on a roll, only to be utterly defeated by this entity that is far more powerful than you. The game's lack of health bars for enemies means you have no idea how much damage, if any, you're doing. All you know is that you're losing, terribly. This feeling of helplessness and frustration happens to you, the player, and provides the motivation to continue playing the game and get more power-ups and one day defeat that jerk. You don't need some story telling you this. You feel motivated to get better at the game just because of the first level. Okay, put down your pitchforks. I know what you're thinking. They just copied MegaMan X. Well, actually, the games released very closely to each other, separated by only a month. I know that the development cycles for games back then was much shorter, but it wasn't that short. For as much praise as MegaMan X gets for its starter level's design, Skyblazer is a game most don't even recall that they played it, or they rented it a long time ago at their favorite, now defunct video game rental spot and forgot the name of it. The same things that can be said about MegaMan X can be said here. Tight controls, valuable power-ups, with some working better than others on certain enemies and bosses. This game has everything a good action platformer needs to have and more. Something you won't find in MegaMan X is some clever Mode 7 usage though. While Skyblazer uses it more in a minigame fashion, it's a nice change of pace from being run through the ringer on some particularly challenging levels, offering an opportunity to restock on your lives. Another use case is when they give you some platforming sections on long, narrow towers, forcing you to essentially scroll the sides of the screen in order to continue climbing or falling. There's also one more usage in a boss fight, but I won't spoil that for you. The game's difficulty is something to be mentioned. As the reviewer mentioned in GamePro, the game is very hard, but it always makes you feel like there's something else that you could do, or maybe you're missing a power-up in order to get past a particularly difficult area. This isn't a game that you can expect to pick up and just master right away. You probably will die. A lot, but that's okay. The game is pretty generous with extra lives, and even then, the game does give you passwords every couple of levels to make sure that you're really not backtracking too much. 1994 Skyblazer is a fun yet challenging adventure. It's not terribly long if you know what you're doing, but it's definitely going to take some time to master each stage and power. If you're a fan of action platformers like Mega Man, I would highly recommend Skyblazer. It may lack some of the polish that Capcom's Reploid has, but don't let that ruin the fun to be had here. Once you get past the writing, there's a pretty fun and criminally underappreciated game that is absolutely worthy of your collection. Thank you so much for joining me on today's episode of Den and Now. If you liked that video, please click the like button below and consider subscribing. I release new content every Friday at 3 p.m., so don't forget to hit that notification bell also. At 100 subscribers, I'll be asking you what your favorite video game is, and the most popular will be my next video. Until next time, peace!